What if the crash you feel every afternoon isn't a caffeine problem? What if it's a signal that your cells are running low on something caffeine was never designed to fix? There are 10 plants with clinical evidence behind them, each one working through a completely different mechanism than stimulation. And most people have never seriously looked at what the data actually says about how they work. Some of them come from traditions going back centuries. All of them have been put through modern scientific scrutiny. We're going to go through every single one. Number 1, Rhodiola rosea. In the 1960s, Soviet researchers got a specific assignment. Find something that could keep soldiers, cosmonauts, and factory workers performing under brutal cold and sustained stress. Not a stimulant. Something that made the body harder to break down. They found it cracking through Siberian permafrost, a flowering plant called Rhodiola rosea. The lore around rhodiola is almost too good. Viking warriors reportedly used it. Siberian hunters carried it on long trips. That kind of story invites skepticism, and it should. But the clinical evidence doesn't actually rely on the lore. The active compounds, rosavins and saladrosides, act on your HPA axis, the hormonal chain running from your brain down to your adrenal glands, controlling cortisol output. Number 2, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years, and the traditional texts describe it in terms that sound almost too broad to believe. Strength, vitality, calm. The Sanskrit name roughly translates to smell of horse, which isn't glamorous, but the implied meaning is the stamina and power of a horse. For most of that history, practitioners prescribed it to people who were physically wasting away or recovering from illness. When researchers started running controlled trials, they weren't testing it against fatigue in a general sense. They found something Ayurvedic practitioners had been working with for centuries without the vocabulary to name it. Ashwagandha genuinely lowers cortisol. The active compounds are called withanolides, and they dial down your body's cortisol response to psychological stress, so your body spends less energy managing that stress reaction and more on actual cognitive and physical work. One finding that keeps appearing across studies is improved sleep quality, and that's not a side effect. Lower cortisol at night means deeper sleep, and deeper sleep means your cells actually restore their energy reserves. The realistic timeline here matters. This isn't something you take Tuesday and feel Wednesday. The cortisol modulating effect builds as withanolides accumulate and your HPA axis recalibrates. And most trials run 8 to 12 weeks before measuring outcomes. What separates ashwagandha from a simple relaxant is that it doesn't sedate you. It removes a drain, and the energy you were burning on stress management stays available for everything else. Number 3, maca root. Maca, or Lepidium mayennii, grows above 13,000 feet in the Peruvian Andes, in conditions that would kill most crops. Thin air, brutal UV, nights that freeze and days that scorch. The Incan people cultivated it for endurance, and Spanish colonizers in the 16th century recorded that horses fed the root became noticeably more vigorous. That's a practical observation from people with a direct economic interest in animal performance. The supplement market has buried that specific story under a lot of noise. Hormone balancer, libido booster, energy drink ingredient. What the clinical data actually supports is narrower than that. Maca doesn't contain hormones and doesn't appear to directly shift hormone levels. The active compounds, macamides and glucosinolates, work partly through the endocannabinoid system and partly through mitochondrial energy production. Studies in postmenopausal women and athletes show the energy benefit as a reduction in accumulated fatigue, not a spike in alertness, and that effect appears independent of sex hormone levels entirely. Quality control is a real problem with maca products specifically, because contamination shows up repeatedly in industry testing. Number 4, ginseng, Panax ginseng. Panax ginseng shows up in Chinese medical texts going back over 2,000 years, and the name Panax comes from the Greek word for all healing, which should immediately make you skeptical. Plants with that kind of branding are usually overselling something. But ginseng also has more clinical research behind it than almost any other adaptogen on this list, so it earns a closer look. The complexity problem is real, though. American ginseng, Siberian ginseng, and Panax ginseng get lumped together constantly in popular writing, but they're chemically distinct plants. Panax ginseng specifically contains ginsenosides, and those are the compounds the clinical evidence actually supports. Ginsenosides work through several pathways at once, supporting mitochondrial energy production, modulating the HPA axis, and improving nitric oxide production, which means better blood flow and oxygen delivery to working muscles and the brain. Trials using standardized Panax ginseng extract found improvements in mental arithmetic, reaction time, and reported calmness under stress, with physical endurance data that's reasonably solid too. The side effect profile is real at higher doses, including insomnia and blood pressure changes, so this isn't a plant you use casually without knowing your baseline health first. Number 5. Holy basil, Tulsi. Ocimum tenuiflorum, or Tulsi, grows outside temples and homes across India, and it's been that way for centuries. The plant was so woven into daily life that people weren't really separating medicine from habit. They just used it constantly for respiratory problems, for anxiety, for general fatigue. That cultural saturation actually makes it harder to study because the traditional claims cover too much ground to test cleanly. So modern research narrowed its focus to inflammation, and that's where things get specific. Tulsi contains eugenol and rosmarinic acid, both COX-2 inhibitors, meaning they reduce inflammatory signaling directly. Chronic low-grade inflammation pulls cellular resources away from energy production, and Tulsi appears to reduce that background load without touching your cortisol axis at all. Number 6. Cordyceps mushroom. Tibetan herders at high altitude noticed something specific about yaks that grazed on a fungus growing out of caterpillar larvae. The animals became unusually energetic. That observation, made in one of the most oxygen-starved places on Earth, eventually reached Olympic coaches and endurance researchers, and the altitude context isn't incidental. It's the whole story. Most commercial cordyceps products are cultivated mycelium, not wild harvested, and the compound profile may differ enough to matter. Sourcing and standardization are real problems here. The active compounds, cordycepin and beta-glucans, improve how efficiently your mitochondria produce ATP from available oxygen, so cells do more with less. Trials have shown improved VO2 max and reduced lactate buildup during exercise in older adults given cordyceps supplementation. Number 7. Peppermint. Peppermint sounds like it doesn't belong here. It's a flavoring. It's in your toothpaste. But the research on peppermint and mental alertness uses a pathway that none of the other plants on this list touch, and that's the olfactory system, the direct nerve route from your nose straight to your brain. The skepticism about aromatherapy is fair because a lot of that research is weak. But menthol is specific. When you inhale it, it activates TRPM8 receptors in your nasal passage, which fire a signal through the trigeminal nerve directly to your brainstem. No digestion, no absorption. Studies show improved attention and working memory with peppermint exposure during cognitive tasks, and the effect is real for roughly as long as you're smelling it. Number 8. Moringa. Moringa oleifera gets called a miracle tree by aid organizations working in regions where malnutrition is a daily reality. That framing is useful for humanitarian work, but it's made the plant easy to dismiss in serious nutrition circles. Strip the marketing away and the chemistry is worth looking at on its own terms. A lot of fatigue that people blame on stress is actually a substrate problem. Your mitochondria need iron, magnesium, and B vitamins to run the energy cycle, and without those raw materials, no adaptogen fixes anything. Moringa leaves supply all of them together, and the vitamin C content in the leaf increases iron absorption directly, which makes it more effective than taking iron alone. Number 9. Schisandra berry. Schisandra chinensis has a botanical quirk worth noting. Its berries carry all 5 flavors recognized in traditional Chinese medicine. Sour, sweet, salty, bitter, pungent, all in one berry. That's interesting, but it's not why Schisandra is on this list. The active compounds are lignans, specifically Schisandrin A, B, and C, and they work primarily through the liver. Your liver stores glycogen, which is what your body burns during sustained effort, mental or physical. Schisondra's lignans protect liver cells from oxidative damage and speed up how efficiently the liver clears metabolic waste after exertion. When recovery costs less, more energy carries forward into the next effort rather than getting spent cleaning up after the last one. Number 10. Gotu Kola. Centella asiatica, Gotu Kola, was the plant Ayurvedic practitioners gave to students before exams and to meditators who needed to hold focus for hours. In Sri Lanka, people eat it as a salad green. That kind of daily casual use over centuries says something. The clinical picture is mixed, and that's worth saying plainly. Some studies show improvements in working memory and attention speed. Others show nothing, and the inconsistency tracks with dosage and age. Older adults with some cognitive decline tend to respond better than young, healthy subjects. The active compounds, triterpenoids called asiaticoside and metacasoside, support blood vessel walls and promote new capillary growth in brain tissue, so more oxygen and glucose actually reach your neurons. 10 plants, 10 different mechanisms, and none of them work by stimulating you. Rhodiola and Ashwagandha slow the cortisol drain. Cordyceps improves how efficiently your cells make ATP. Holy basil cuts the inflammatory load, pulling resources away from everything else. Moringa supplies the raw materials the whole system runs on. Schisandra reduces recovery costs through the liver. Gotu Kola maintains the delivery infrastructure your brain depends on over years. These plants aren't interchangeable, so choosing one means understanding where your energy is actually going. Stress points toward Rhodiola or Ashwagandha. Physical depletion points toward Cordyceps or Schisandra. A nutritional gap underneath everything means Moringa addresses that first, because no adaptogen compensates for missing substrates. None of them replace sleep, food, or movement. They work with those foundations. Before spending money on any of these, talk to a clinician who knows your health history. The data supports these plants. It doesn't support using them without knowing what you're working with.